I wouldn't have used the word appeasement, is the truth. And there's been a lot of debate, and you'll have picked up quite a lot of it, about people saying we're in the 1930s. Some have said 1933, some have said 1937. We need to increase defence spending. The world is most dangerous it's been for a long time, et cetera, et cetera. And there's some truth in that. I don't happen to believe that we're about to end up in World War III, but I do think it's nonetheless very important that we continue to support Ukraine. It will inevitably end in some sort of negotiated settlement. And the problem would be, what does that look like? And if we end up in a situation where Ukraine has had to give up the Donbass and a large chunk of its territory, currently 20% of its territory, the inevitable view, particularly if you're Ukrainian, is, okay, this may put a stop to this for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, but he's going to come back and have another go. And, there's a real danger for that. Now, the wider issue is people up, particularly in Finland and Denmark. I mean, the Prime Minister of Denmark was saying the other day that he thought there was a danger of war with Russia within the next 3 to 5 years. The difference, of course, with the Baltic states, with Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, and the countries up in that part of the world, Finland and so forth, is that they are part of NATO. And you have to ask yourself, would Putin be stupid enough to take on NATO?
And is this why you think it's not the 1930s?
Yeah. Yeah, basically. Now, one's got to be very careful here because, there's probabilities, there's possibilities. Anything is possible, obviously, in world affairs. And I'm not about to say this would never happen. But my instinct is that the probability is that if we manage to ensure that Ukraine does not end up by being taken over by Putin or lose a large chunk of its territory, then that will put Putin back in his box. And he is clearly, their economy is suffering. They're spending something like, I can't remember the latest figure, 40-50% on GDP.
Putin's mindset is, he would have been planning this for years. He didn't suddenly wake up and absent-mindedly annex the Sudetenland. He's been planning it for a long time. And I think the point I'm making is there is no guarantee whatsoever that Ukraine is the end of Putin's ambition.
No,
however much you can't say I believe him.
No, you would be foolish to make that assumption, wouldn't you? And much like before the Second World War, he has spent years building up the grievance mentality in Russia as well.
Yes, he has indeed, and so we are seen as sort of encroaching on territory, and it's all our fault. And on the other hand, you look down to the south of Ukraine and Russia, and you've got Moldova, which is he already has people there in Transnistria. So I think the only thing that is trustworthy about Putin is that he isn't trustworthy.
I don't believe Putin's got goals on other countries. He might be a dictator, but he's not crazy, and he knows if he attacked anyone and brought in NATO, he would lose. He knows that. He's not stupid. This is very much a regional war that he can win. And he knows that, and he's not going to stop. And my biggest reason really for wanting this to stop is we're dying that don't need to die. Everyone's going to take a loss. The Russians will take a loss because I don't believe they will get the whole of Ukraine. I think they will want to keep Crimea and Odessa.
Why don't you? But again, I don't know either way. But why are you inclined to believe him when he says he won't go any further west? This is a man who pushes his political opponents out of windows, people who've just annoyed him out of windows. Puts
when
people like
you say
Navalny,
go west, you mean into other countries?
No, or deeper into Ukraine,
He may well want to go deeper into Ukraine.
Well, that's getting closer to the Western.
No, it is, and I wouldn't rule that out absolutely, especially when he started using terms as far as Nazification. And I think Tucker Carlson asked him some quite relevant questions over that about what does that look like? How do you think you're going to do that? It's similar to the issue in Israel. How are the Israelis going to get rid of all of Hamas? It's a difficult thing to do because it's difficult to identify.
Yeah, but the denazification, when he uses that term, he's using it to try and justify his war and make out that Ukraine is full of Nazis.
Oh no, I agree, but the same ideology.
Whereas, but Gaza is full of Hamas, isn't it?
Absolutely, but what I'm saying is, if Putin's going to use that as an excuse, he's got to be able to put a description to it of what that looks like.
I don't think we should be doing anything to further the war in Ukraine. In fact, I think we should be putting a lot more effort into trying to broker peace. And one of the things that really, really has wound me up, and if it's true, I think is inexcusable. I watched the Tucker Carlson interview with Putin, the 2-hour interview. I'm not political, I'm apolitical. I've got no interest in politics. But I genuinely believe what he was saying, and specifically about when he said that Boris Johnson went over to Ukraine to try and convince Zelensky not to accept a peace deal that was being put on the table. It absolutely incensed me, infuriated me. When you've actually seen people who have lost their lives at the hands of, politicians who start wars, it is one of the saddest sights you can see.
It is, but why were you so quick to believe Putin on this, just out of interest?
Do you know what? I don't want to bore you with my history, but I've been around quite a lot. I've met quite a lot of different people from different backgrounds. I have a pretty good sense when someone's telling the truth, when they're being genuine or not. I genuinely believe that what he was saying in relation to having absolutely no aspirations to, move his borders further west, I believe that. So it made you kind of question the whole campaign in the first place. There's a lot of chatter about, is this really just about propping up the military-industrial complex? It was announced recently that we're building another aircraft carrier, because of everything that's going on at the moment. When I was in the armed forces, Russia was made out to be this big foe that we should fear and that we should continually try and assess to see what their capabilities are. But then when you actually sit down and you watch that Tucker Carlson interview and you listen to what Putin has to say and the way he articulated himself, I'm no fan of him. I've never met him. It really just makes me question the whole campaign, the rationale behind it, the amount of money that's been...
Can I ask about I'm just curious as to why you trust him so promptly on these things, because a couple of things, leading respected historians say that a lot of his history was wrong in that interview, people who know better than I do, and just how he operates within Russia itself. And Salisbury, for example, the Novichok attacks here, and various other things we could point to. I mean, why are you, in a sense, putting your eggs in his basket instead of your own nation's basket?
I wouldn't summarise it as that. I would summarise it more as the case of I believe what he says when he says that he has no aspirations to move his borders, further west. I believe that.